Hi, I'm Mr. Evan from Belmont Hills Library, and as part of our exciting things we're doing for you while we can't go to be at the library, I will be reading War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, so you don't have to. A couple things before we start this. Hopefully, this will be a weekly thing, but we'll see, depending on various events. We'll see if I can get to it every week. Second, I won't be actually reading it to you. I'm just going to read it and then tell you what I think about it and give you a précis about what's going on. I'll be reading the Briggs translation. Somehow I've managed to come up with four different translations. I've chosen the Briggs, but I may, someplace along the way here, compare them just for a way of seeing things. And lastly, if you've got any comments or you want to say anything, feel free to put them below. So, as we start War and Peace, the whole beginning of this book is three different days in which Tolstoy is going to introduce us to the major characters. One will take place in St. Petersburg, one will take place in Moscow, and one will take place on the personal estate of one of the characters. And overriding almost all the conversations you're going to hear at the beginning of this book is the discussion of the political events of the time. Namely, Napoleon was sort of torturing Europe, as it were, and what were the Russians going to do about it? Which I'll get into later on as we read this further. The first day we're going to talk about is actually the very beginning of the book is a party in St. Petersburg. It's being held at the house of a important socialite named Princess Anna, but we're not going to talk too much about her because there's a main character named Princess Anna, and we don't want to confuse the two. At this party, she's basically just invited people to show up, and we start with Prince Vasily Kuragin, and we learn about him and his family. Now, he seems to be a fairly well-connected guy, but he's got two sons and a daughter. His two sons are Anatol and Hippolyte, and his daughter is Helena. And his two sons sound like ne'er-do-wells. Basically, we will meet them later on, and we'll discover one of them is very much of a spendthrift and a drunkard, and the other one is kind of a fool, for lack of a better way to put it. His daughter is considered beautiful, but we don't really get to see too much of her. She shows up and takes him away from the party, and everyone oohs and ahs her, but you don't really get to know her too much to begin with. But we do learn that Prince Vasily is connected because at this party he runs into the other Princess Anna. This is Princess Anna Drubetskoy, and she is, well, there's no way to put it. She's poor, but don't cross her, basically, because she's really, really good at getting what she wants. She has a son, Boris, and because she sees war is coming on, she wants Boris transferred out of whatever regiment he is into a higher position. And at this party, she buttonholes Kuragin, basically, to get rid of her, he says, okay, I'll do it for you. And later on, we discover that, in fact, he has done this for her. Also at this party, the next people we meet are Prince Andrei Bolkonsky and his wife Lisa. Now, Bolkonsky is going to be one of the major characters in this book, but as we meet him, he's just not happy about living in society. He's not a big society type guy, and he's married to a woman who's, the belle of the ball, basically, and he's not happy about this at all. And basically, he treats everybody coldly, and he treats his new wife coldly. She, on the other hand, is, seems to be a nice person. She's kind of presented early on by Tolstoy as sort of silly. But she's pregnant, and she's not, as he describes her as silly, but he also describes her as someone who lightens the room up. Everybody is happy when she comes walking into the room. So she's not a bad character, but Andrei is kind of, not such a, happy character, let's put it that way. After the two of them show up, we get the third major appearance, and this is Pierre Bezukhov, I think is his last name. Now, he's the illegitimate son of one of the richest men in Russia, which puts him in a sort of awkward situation. His dad, Kirill Bezukhov, likes him because he sent him around Europe to get an education, basically. But being the illegitimate son, where he actually stands in society is a big question mark. As he comes in, we discover that he may have toured Europe, but he has sort of no social graces whatsoever. And he's a big fan of Napoleon when at this initial party nobody else pretty much is. And so he manages to pretty much stick his foot in his mouth regularly and make everybody sort of think they don't dislike him because he's not a dislikable guy, but he's sort of like, one of those guys where it's like someone keeps wanting to say, would you shut up, basically. Oh, so he comes along, and we discover an interesting thing too, because his dad lives in Moscow, so he's been sent to St. Petersburg to figure out what he wants to do with his life. And he's been living with the Kuragins, which isn't necessarily the best place for him to be living with, given the two sons being bad people. But we've also discovered that he's a friend of Prince Andrei, who we just met, Bolkonsky. And you would think giving Prince Andrei's sort of, way of not liking people, he wouldn't like Pierre, but in fact he does. And I suspect it's because Pierre is real in a society that isn't. And I mean, Tolstoy makes some comments along the way in this book about, Pierre's smile was real and everybody else's was fake. So we like Pierre, but in some ways he's a hard to like person because he's sort of feckless. He kind of just floats around. He doesn't really know what he wants to do. He has lots of sort of he's willing to have spirited discussions about Napoleon and stuff like that, but he doesn't really fit in, and nobody knows what to do. The last little bit we get out of this party is one of the other characters, the other Princess Anna, who has a son Boris. And trying to look out for her son Boris, she pigeonholes Prince Vasily and, nags him into getting, her son an appointment. And so that's where we think we're going to leave this. This party breaks up. This all still happens in one day, basically. We go back to the house of the Bolkonskys, because that's where Pierre has visited. His friend Andrei says, come have dinner, so they go have dinner. And we discover there that there's a big problem between Andrei and his wife. Basically, they have a big argument in front of Pierre, and eventually she goes to bed, and they go to have dinner. And we discover that Andrei basically says, my life is over because I got married. I can no longer do what I want because I'm now trapped in this phony society. We also find out, by the way, that Andrei is going off to war because he has been appointed as an aide to the chief Russian general. I think it's Kutuzov. So his wife isn't happy about that, but in a way we sense he is. At the end of their discussion, Pierre says he promised to go visit his friend Anatole, and Andrei's like, no, you shouldn't go there. Those guys are bad for you. And then they go out, and Pierre says, no, I should go home, I should go home, which he promptly doesn't do. He promptly goes and parties with his friend Anatole. And we learn another character there, who's in the ranks, and his name is Juzakov, I think. I'm not positive. He'll come back later, so don't worry about that. But they have this riotous party. I mean, it's just, they're all drunk all the time. And later on, we discover that as a result of this party, Pierre has been banished from St. Petersburg back to Moscow, and Juzakov has been broken in the ranks. So whatever they did, they really got in trouble for it. So that ends essentially the first day in the first party. The second party we go is a while later, and it's now in Moscow. And this party is being thrown by the Rostovs. Now, the Rostovs are a fairly large family, and they're very rich, but the dad is not beyond spending lots and lots of money. And so we're sort of, it's a question about what their long-term prospects are, precisely because he doesn't have any money. Or he has money, but he may be losing it because he spends it on just about everybody. He has 2 sons and 2 daughters. Now, his daughters are Vera and Natalia. Vera is sort of, you get the impression she's 21, 22, 23. Natalia's like 15. Vera is very much of a sort of strong-willed, but oh, takes no nonsense. Basically, she's not into the whole game playing and any of that society type stuff. Natalia is a 15-year-old. She falls in love with whoever walks in front of her. Basically, there are also two sons, and the sons, I'm gonna get these confused. Oh, the older son, I don't remember what his name is, but anyway, there are two sons. One of them, is Nikolai. Nikolai is the older of the sons, and Peter is the younger. That's it. Oh, and we're going to get all confused because there's all sorts of at this particular party, we get sort of all sorts of other love relationships as opposed to married older relationships because most of the kids are younger in this particular family. Once again, we're going to get a visit from Princess Anna. This time, she's now managed to get her son into the guards, but now he needs to have all the outfit for it, for the guards. So she's going to basically hit up the Rostov, Mrs. Rostov, who's also named Natalia, just like her daughter, so you can get confused by that, for money to have her son kitted out. And because they're all friends, her friend will provide her with this money. And this is yet again we're discovering that she's Princess Anna Drobotskoy is not someone to fool around with. She knows how to get what she wants. She may be poor, but she knows what she's doing. We also, at this particular party, we get to see various other characters. We get to see that Natalia is interested in Princess Drobotskoy's son Boris, so they're sort of a love interest. But Boris a little bit older, and it's you get the impression this is like a teenage infatuation type thing. And we also get to see a cousin, Sonia, who's interested in Nikolai. But Nikolai, although he keeps saying he loves her, he spends much of the party flirting with another character named Julie Kerrigan, who we can't get confused with Anatol and Vasily Kerrigan because she's not related to them whatsoever. Thank you, Tolstoy. So anyway, that leaves basically throughout this entire party, Sonia is upset and annoyed and, worried and all this other stuff. Well, this party is going on. Pierre Bursakov's dad, remember he's the illegitimate son of Kirill, is dying. He's had a couple of strokes. So the same time this party is going on, he's dying. And you basically get going back and forth between the two of them because, it's in the interest of Pierre to try to, butter up his dying dad because in theory, he can't inherit because he's illegitimate, but we discover that in fact, if they send a letter to the Tsar, and the Tsar lets the father adopt the illegitimate son, then he becomes the heir. So he has an interest in doing that. But he's kind of, as I said, he's kind of feckless and not really attached to the world around him in this way. He's sort of a dreamer right now. So he doesn't really realize that. But Princess Anna, remember her, the manipulator, does. And she has an interest in supporting Pierre's claim because Pierre is not really her friend, but her son is the older man's, the dying man's godson. So she has an interest in getting money out of this guy because remember, she's poor. We also discover that Prince Vasily, remember him from the beginning, this is Prince Vasily Kerrigan, whose sons are the ne'er-do-wells. He's worried that he's going to run out of money because basically they're spending him out of house and home. But he's connected to the dying man through the dying man's dead wife. So he has a chance to inherit too. So you've got these two sort of different events going on. You've got this sort of incredibly lavish party going on at the Rostovs, while you've got the rich man who's a bit of a miser. So his estate isn't lavish in the sense that he likes to spend money, but he's, everybody wants his money. So you go back and forth between these two, and you discover that, Princess Anna, the manipulator, has managed to, at some point in the past, convince the dying man, before he's had his strokes, that Prince Vasily and there are three other sisters who stand to inherit, that they're all bad people. And so in a pit of pique, no, a fit of pique, let's get that right, a fit of pique, the old man has changed his will to inherit Pierre and has essentially written a letter to the Tsar saying, can I adopt him, to make that possible. So we discover later on, as everyone is lying around the deathbed, that Vasily is desperately trying to get the women, the three sisters who could inherit, to realize that they may not be able to inherit if that will comes out, because he's apparently written more than one will. And we also get Princess Anna trying to maneuver Pierre in to meet his dying father in hopes that, she can get him successfully to inherit, and presumably so that she can, get if nothing else, some money. And Boris, her son, meets Pierre, and the two of them sort of get along pretty well, which is sort of a hopeful thing from her point of view. At the end of that particular party, we get one of the most, there's no other way to put it, horrifyingly funny scenes ever, in which basically Princess Anna, the manipulator, and the oldest of the three daughters who stand to inherit are yanking back and forth on this portfolio that apparently contains the will, and fighting all over it, while Prince Vasily is sitting there thinking, oh my God, what the heck is going on? And at this point, the old man dies. So it doesn't matter, because it turns out that will, they didn't destroy the will and the letter soon enough, and we discover that Pierre is going to inherit. Now the thing with Pierre is, through this entire scene, he's basically like just letting things happen. He's sort of the well, things are going the way they ought to go, without really putting himself in there to do something about it. He's sort of unaware of what's going on. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes, because right now he's just sort of this blank canvas in a way on which somebody can be painted, and we're not sure what's going to happen with that. The third scene, now we've finished with that, we're going with Prince Andrei and his wife to Prince Andrei's father's estate. Now, Prince Andrei's father is fairly well off, but he's a bit of a recluse. He lives a very, very, and Tolstoy has fun with this, organized life. He does not show up to dinner a minute early. He does not do anything a minute early. He sleeps his 40 minutes, exactly 40 minutes. He does all these things. So he is sort of an interesting character in the sense that, well, who is this guy? Why is he living this way? And he and his son are sort of, they don't hate each other, but it's sort of one of those, I'm slightly scared of Dad. I'm slightly, unhappy about this. He also, Andrei also has a sister, Maria, and I left it out earlier. Maria is not just, she's described as not particularly beautiful, but she has these wondrous eyes. And so she's sort of this, she seems to be a very nice, somewhat noble character, but we discover earlier that Prince Vasily, with his ne'er-do-well sons, is hoping to marry one of them off, and the princess, Lisa, who is Andrei's wife, and therefore Maria's sister-in-law, thinks that Maria would be a nice person to marry Anatole off to, which is kind of a misfit, of course, because we know Anatole is a total ne'er-do-well. But the only thing that matters to Vasily is that, Mr. Bolkonsky, the older Bolkonsky, has lots of money. So once again, it's hard to actually like some of these characters because they're all maneuvering basically right now for money's sake. And, some of them we'll like, I assume we're going to like more later on. But right now you're sort of like, oh, come on, give me a break. So at that particular meeting, we get a few things out in the estate of Senior Bolkonsky. But basically, it's a leave-taking. He's going off to war, and he's leaving his wife, the princess who he sort of hates, with his sister and with his dad. And she's not happy about that, but she really has little choice there to do that. So that's basically where you leave it at the end of the first section of this book. Tolstoy's done a masterful job of introducing us to all the characters, but if you haven't kept them straight, don't worry. It's really hard to. And in fact, every single copy I have of this book has a listing of the families and the relationships because it's hard to keep track. And one of the things that it's interesting about this Briggs translation is I believe he actually adds his own words to the text because there are times when a character will return and he'll say something like, no, this is Boris. You remember him from this particular scene earlier. And I don't see that in any of the other versions. So I suspect that he's sort of editorializing a little bit with Tolstoy, so helping us out as the reader so we don't have to keep flipping back and forth to figure out what exactly is going on. So we're off and running. As I said, it's interesting. There are lots of characters, and Tolstoy is sort of, sticking it to upper class Russian society. And the interesting thing with upper class Russian society too is it was very French oriented. So the whole dislike of Napoleon sort of goes against the whole character of the society. Upper class Russians spoke in French. That was the language of the rich people. So you get a little bit of that too with whether they like Napoleon or not, and there's a bit of support for Napoleon, even though a lot he had done a lot of questionable things, but there's some support for Napoleon because essentially he's an authoritarian, and after the French Revolution had descended into lots of people getting their heads chopped off and lots of chaos, having an authoritarian on top is not necessarily something that is opposed by the crowned heads of Europe. Well, at least to start with. Napoleon starts getting in trouble because he starts wanting to take over Europe, but that's to be future seen. So that's where we are right now, and we'll see where we go next. That's the first section. As I said, I'll try to read the next section next week, and we'll see what we can do. Feel free to leave comments, and till then, we'll see you later.